Hey Ted, how are you doing? Welcome to the show.
I'm great. Thanks, Paul.
Well, we were talking at the NTMA conference recently, and as I learned a little bit more about kind of your situation, I was just more and more intrigued. So I would love for you to start by sharing with the audience who you are, what your shop is, and kind of your backstory.
Okay, again, my name is Ted Toth. I work for Rosenberger North America in Pensacola, New Jersey, as a senior technical advisor, which is we'll get into a little later. But as far as our company and my career are kind of intertwined because it was a family business, so I can go over that. If you know how basically our company started, and
Yeah.
basically in 1947, my uncle, my dad, and his two brothers were laid off by RCA, peacetime layoffs after World War II. And then they had a machine shop in the garage. That's one of the things, a couple of machines. That's one of the reasons why RCA kind of let them go. And 2 weeks later, they called him up and asked him to do work for them. So kind of a
That
concept.
worked out.
So in 1948, we actually got incorporated. They decided to do it as a business. So and then about 65, my grandfather retired, and it was my grandfather and his three sons, and then my
Okay.
grandfather retired, and now it was the three sons took over the business, and it was started out as Lewis Totes and Sons, and
Hmm.
then when my dad and two uncles took it over, it was Toth Incorporated.
Okay.
So they in about 66 is when we first got into NC machines, so Moog Hydro Points. It's a really noisy, low tech machines, but in that day they were top of the line. So around 47 is when I got involved with the company. I turned 16, and at that point I had working paper, so I was on the payroll at 16 because I worked on
Wow.
weekends and vacations, and sometimes I go and late at night work with my dad for a couple hours. So and then in '74, he before like 2 days before school started, he flew me out with him to IMTS in '74 to look at Bridgeport had a milling machine with a computer on. He said so. It was the new boss controls that just came out. So that was kind of what got me hooked. Really, I mean, I was in the machine shop business a little bit, sweeping floors and stuff like that. What really got me hooked on machine technology is when I visited IMTS in '74 and saw. I mean, we had lathes, we had mills, we had a couple of grinders, but to see these big bridge mills and planers, different grinders, different types of grinders, big lathes that are big as you could put a car in them.
Sure. Yeah.
It's opened up my eyes to the different types of technology that are out there. Even they even had EDM back then, so it was kind of an eye-opening experience that really started my life in manufacturing. So actually, we bought a machine in '75. I started programming it, and I was still a sophomore in high school.
Oh,
So we got,
really?
we got the machine in the like early June. So I was able to program it and learn how to program and operate it all summer long. And then I would come in on Saturdays, or I'd come in at night if there was an issue, and help the operator that was working on it program it. So that was pretty cool.
Hmm.
So in about '78, we got our first Series 2 machines, and we also got our first programming system. Now, I was working full time at this point
Okay.
in '78. So it was called Compact 2. It used to teletype, it was hooked into the phone lines. Really slow, cumbersome process. And it
Hmm.
took forever to get to program anything. But in '79, we kind of trashed that idea because it was just too costly. And Bridgeport came out with the EasyCam. So we were one of the beta sites for Bridgeport. So it's kind of
Wow.
neat. So, and then '80, we got our first machining center, which I was involved with doing that. And then at the same time, when I turned 16, I was also a volunteer fireman. So that my dad, my brothers, we were all volunteer firemen.
Oh,
So
cool.
in '85, I was assistant chief at the time, and I had to make a big decision, to stay with the fire company and put all my time in there, or run the company, run Toth Incorporated.
Right.
So kind of decided that was a turning point in my career to actually run Toth Incorporated. At that point, I was helping my dad quote because
Okay.
he had trouble quoting because he didn't know the CNC machines. And at that time, we had like five or six CNC machines.
Got it.
So I started doing the quoting and I started giving jobs out. So eventually, he made me general manager in like '85, '86. So, and then my uncle retired in like '86. And then in '93, my other uncle retired in '92. So now it was my dad and his three sons. And at
Okay.
that point,
Oh, your brothers were also in the business.
yeah, I had two brothers involved, my brother Tim and my brother Tom. And so, again, it was my dad and his three sons for like 2 years, and he decided he had a little bit too much. 91 was a big downturn in the business. So at that point, he was able to give the shares. They were basically worth nothing, because we had a lot of debt and not a whole lot of income. So at that point, we took the business over in 93 and changed the name to Toth Technologies.
Okay.
So, and then I guess 96 is when we joined the NTMA, where I really learned how to run a business. I mean, we were just machinists.
Oh, wow. Right.
So a friend of mine said, "Hey, you need to join the NTMA because they have programs and seminars and webinars on how to run your business." So that's where we got involved. And then my dad retired in 2004. We moved to a different couple of buildings. Now we're in the building we moved into 2007. We're currently in now. And then 2010 at a trade show, I ran into one of my customers, and we got into talking, and I invited him to our shop. At that point, they said, "Well, we need a manufacturer in the U.S." It was a German-based company. They got all their supplies from Germany, assembled them over here. So he came in and he said, "I got to get the CEO over here." So the CEO, 2 days later, he flew in from Germany. So
wow, I was excited to see you.
It's pretty impressive. So we had a little in 2011. They couldn't put a deal together they wanted to buy the business.
Okay.
They came to us, and in machine shops, it's tough to sell a machine shop, in this day and age. So we were pretty fortunate. And we had no fourth generation coming up. We were third generation running. We were at it for 19 years, I think. Right. So at 2011, they were talking about it. They decided, no, we don't have it. We're not making enough money for them. They wanted 15 to 20% EBITDA. And we were making like 5%, which most machine shops do. We're out to make a living and reinvested it ourselves and all.
Sure.
So they didn't feel we're very profitable. So we did a thing. We actually kind of made up our own little, we kind of merged with them, kind of like we said with Rosenberg or Toth. So now Rosenberg could say, well, they had a machine shop that they're working with in the U.S. so they can supply the military parts of the military. Yeah.
They just partnered at a sort of vendor-client relationship, but strategically. Okay.
So we ran that for about a year, and then I got a call one day to come up to see them, and the CEO was there, Hans Rosenberger, and he said, "We want to buy you." I said, "Well, we already went through that exercise last year." And I said, "Well, here's where we left off." He goes, "No, your original amount that we started at." So, because I guess the Germans really felt that by doing that partnership without their approval, that we put our soul into it. And really help them out, and they liked that idea. So we basically went over the accountant's heads and say, "Yeah, these guys are what we need, what we're looking for." So 2012, we made a deal and sold it to them. And
10 years ago.
10 years ago, yeah. Wow. 2017, we got done all the buyout, and they still asked me to stay on. Mm-hmm. They didn't know what I was at that point. I was a vice president, and they reorganized the plant. The vice presidents were now in charge of business units, and the plants are run by general managers, and we already had a general manager. So basically, they asked me to step down into engineering, which I love. That's my specialty. So that's where the title, the title, what the heck was the title now? Senior Technical Advisor. That's a title they gave me just for a title.
Sure.
You really know what
you get to tinker with toys and play and make stuff, and you love that.
Well, they call me the idea guy. So it's my job to try to do, reduce labor, try to come up with ideas to automate stuff. So it's fun. I get to spend their money. So.
That's not a bad deal. Not a bad deal. Wow. What an amazing story. So when you and your brothers took it over from your father, approximately what size was the company?
We had about 15, maybe 17 employees.
Okay. Okay.
In 2012, when we sold it, we had about 35. So we kind of doubled the size of it.
Okay. Yep.
Now we're at 70 to 80 employees. I'm out of management right now, so I don't know the number.
Yeah, you don't need to worry about such details.
That's it.
Wow. And that's super fascinating. When when you came back around and when they came back to you a year later and said, "Yeah, we'd like to buy you now," had your EBITDA gone up over that year?
No, actually,
not really.
We bought some other equipment.
Oh, I see.
Realizing we still needed to support these guys, we had to buy some other equipment, some more Swiss machines that actually allowed us to keep up with the product.
Okay.
So yeah, that actually went up. It went down a little bit as far as
Right.
because the value went down.
Sure.
But and they actually bought us. They assumed all our debt too, which was nice.
Okay. So it was a
Um,
good deal for you and your brother. Were your brothers still involved at the time?
yeah, they were still involved, but they couldn't carry three of us as owners.
Sure.
So carry my one brother Tim. He still works for us. He actually works in Florida, and he's our estimator, our senior estimator.
Oh, right on.
My brother Tom wasn't able to stay with the company. They couldn't carry all three of us, and he went into he's quality control, so he's a quality control manager at a local shop. So
Okay.
still involved with the business. So.
Right. Right. Okay. Wow. What an interesting story. And so obviously the company's seen a lot of growth since they bought you. So they're investing in new machines and people and processes and all that kind of stuff. That's
Yeah,
that's
correct.
that's
Yeah.
that's wonderful. Um,
We took it to a certain level in 2012, and it's nice that they're taking it to the next level. I didn't have the resources to do it to the next level, so
yeah.
kind of like sometimes you got to cut your ties and say, okay, I did as best I could,
Hmm.
and they're able to take it to the next level. And I'm here to help them take it to the next level, and it's
Right.
fun, seeing where we're going and then planning out the next 5 years is going to be interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Why retire if you can do what you love every day and have a nice secure situation there?
I'll retire in a little bit soon because I'm coming up to 49 years with the company. So I think I'm gonna at 50 years I'll probably drop back to 3 days a week. So
Okay. Okay.
from 6 days a week. So.
Yeah, I bet. Well, wow, super interesting. So, you said you had about a 5 year earnout. Is that right? I'd love for you to just kind of explain as much as you're willing, just kind of what that process was like of having them buy you. Obviously, it was it was just you and them, right? You weren't entertaining other offers, or you weren't sort of out on the market. Yeah, can you just describe a little bit about what that process was like?
It's pretty easy once we come up with the cost and they agreed on it, and it was just a matter of just splitting up between. We have three brothers, and we each, I had 34 shares. They both had 33 shares.
Uh-huh.
And that was basically it. They gave us 25% up front and then the rest over 5 years. So it
Okay.
was a buyout. And my one brother Tom, like I said, he wasn't able to stay with the company, but they still gave him the checks every week, so
Right.
every month.
And so how did you decide what you all wanted in the first place? Was it just what would sort of set you up comfortably in your future, or was it a
No,
multiple of EBITDA, or how did you decide?
it was a EBITDA, yeah, multiple EBITDAs, but even though when they looked at it, they said, we weren't really worth what they wanted, and I forget what they actually called it. It's a little extra value they threw in there.
Okay.
And
Okay.
wasn't really up on that. We had a lawyer, our family lawyer, that was helped us along with that. So,
Okay.
uh,
And with that earnout, was that just the other 75% over 5 years, or did you have to hit certain
no,
targets?
no, that was the earn. We had that was the earn out over 5 years. We did have a bonus that they gave us over a period of years, but again, right over during that time, we hit the sequestration in 15 and 16. They kind of dropped out. With
Mm,
the defense
right.
market dropped out. We're pretty heavy in the defense market. So.
Right. Okay. Yeah, when I sold my shop, we did get some amount up front, but then there was some earnouts. But part of those earnouts was based on hitting revenue targets,
Mm-hmm.
which is tricky because now you're not in the driver's seat; they are.
Right.
So trying to hit those metrics when you're not making all the decisions can be a sticky situation. So just advice for those listening: if you're going to have an earnout, try to have it be more something that you can control, or if just a fixed number of years. So
Yeah,
wow.
we didn't know any better. It was actually our lawyer set us up with that. So he told them these were our conditions, and
Yeah, no, sounds like he advised you well, so good job. All right, so I'd love to hear a little bit more about the specifics of what exactly your shop looks like, or the shop looks like today, what you make, what you specialize in. You said defense, but can you elaborate a little bit more?
yeah, we are. I guess you'd say elevator speeches. We manufacture parts for radar systems and satellite antennas and satellite components for the defense and aerospace defense communication system, or industries rather. So we've always been involved with the communications. Was our first customer. And basically, they're still our customer. They change their names a few times, but they're still working on the same facility.
Mm-hmm.
For 75 years.
Wow.
It's kind of interesting, but so we've always been in communications, whether it was and then when RCA split off in the '60s to radar systems, which was a local facility, and then up north of us, they opened up a satellite facility making satellites in the '60s. So that's how we really got involved with the other industries, and we've kind of always stuck to those industries because we knew them, and we always looked at their competitors and stuff, and found other business that way. So, but we do we right now when they purchased us, we were doing about 10% microwave connectors and 90% subcontract work. Okay. And the microwave connectors was supporting them and a few other suppliers. So so right now, in a various, one time it was reverse that, it was 20% satellite components and 80% microwave connectors. This year it's about 50-50. Okay. We got a couple big orders for some antennas for satellites, which is really it's going to be a nice program. Mm-hmm. So it fluctuates, but we are a we're a captive shop. We build our own product for our microwave computers, and then we're a subcontractor for the satellite components and electronic chassis and stuff like that.
So those are so you're partly captive and partly a service provider for other companies?
Correct.
Okay, got it. Interesting.
And even when we're captive, they quote us out to other shops.
Okay, you still got to keep your pencil sharp.
Yeah, it's our parent, or we call it a parent company, the sister company that designs and assembles a lot of the components. There's some components that they can't sub out to other people because we have proprietary processes. Mm-hmm. So it kind of keeps us. And that's one of the reasons why Rosenberger bought us. We do glass and metal seals, and there's only about 20 companies in the U.S. that actually do that.
So you're machining glass, or what? What is it?
Machining Kovar material, okay. And we fuse that into we fuse glass beads into Kovar material. They're eyelets like. Then there's usually a center conductor in the center used for most of the defense contractors use them on the radar systems. Because they're very reliable. It's not like a Teflon insulator. Usually, in like your back of your television, you have an F connector that has a Teflon connector. Well, we use glass and we fuse the glass together. And sometimes they're called hermetic seals, where we have to pull vacuum and spray them with helium to see if they leak. So
pretty fancy.
Really robust seals.
Yeah.
And some of the newer ones go down. We have 5,000 center conductors, so the pin through the center is 5,000 on some of them. Really small.
Wow, 5,000. So you're drilling 5,000 holes, kind of thing.
Well, in our fixtures, but there's usually a 6,000 or 7,000 hole through the bead. So we beads from companies that make this special glass, dielectric glass that we fuse. And it's kind of an interesting process. It doesn't really stick to the metal. We have to grow an oxide on the metal, and then the glass sticks to the oxide on the metal.
That's very technical. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very technical. It's kind of a black art, be able to figure it out. But it's a fun process. We started doing that in like '85, but we were subcontracting it out. So it wasn't until 90, it was like 2000 that we decided to bring it in house. So.
And did you do that because it was too challenging to get reliable lead times or quality, or just?
Yes. It was some of the chassis that we were doing, little chassis for the flight chassis. It was taking 20, 30 weeks to get them done, to get just the glass.
20 or 30 weeks. Yeah. Whoa, that's a long lead time.
It's a lot going to. You have to buy the hardware, and then you got to build the tooling to hold it in place while it goes through an oven. And so we were doing, we would buy the stuff to make sure it fits, and then we would design the fixtures for them because they couldn't hold the accuracy that we were able to hold machining them. Mm. And then, it was just like, it was inevitable. It's like, well, the only thing we don't do is run them through our furnace. So, and I've been to other facilities. We used 3 different suppliers, so I knew the process. So it was only inevitable for us to look at the process. And it was one of our customers also said, we got to reduce your lead time.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
It's a big gamble for us to stick our necks out and purchase one. Now we have 3 ovens, 3 furnaces. So.
Yeah. So you. Even before you got purchased, you were fairly specialized. Can you talk a little bit about the diversity of the type of work and customers you had over the years as the company grew from, the earliest years?
Well, there's three primary customers. One's in the satellite business where we were making antennas and satellite components, some out of titanium, so some bigger stuff basically but it was all small quantity. You said it was one of a lot of one ofs.
Yep.
Point. And some of the quantities are a little higher on some of the stuff, but it was a unique type of employee you needed on staff in order to handle stuff like that. One of, especially sometimes we're working on some complex mounts and all, they would be working a month on one part. So
Wow.
so it was early, and that's before 5-axis.
Okay.
Now with 5-axis, we probably cut it back to about a week.
Wow.
So
Okay.
technology. And then so that was a satellite, which was like, and they don't build a lot of satellites. Well, there's newer satellites now, GPS.
Yeah.
They're making 30 of them, but over a period of 10 years. But all the other satellites, they build one or two. So you're not
Right.
something you could really get into production.
Sure.
However, because we were kind of a niche, we were able to get a little bit higher dollar for them.
Okay.
For doing, because it was 100% inspection on them also.
Right.
So again, if you talk about being a small shop and you're only doing small quantities, well, you can't do it for free.
No.
I mean, a lot of times we expect to do small quantity to get to larger quantities, but in a lot of cases we did that many times and never got the larger quantities for like electronic chassis and stuff like that.
Right.
So I kind of learned our lessons with that. And then, like I said, in 2000 is when we started doing microwave connectors for other companies, because we were just providing a service of sealing, and then eventually we made the connectors and then started selling them ourselves.
And is that when the volume started getting larger and you bought like Swiss machines? Because if you're buying Swiss, you must be having a lot of parts to make.
Yeah, and was it 2009? We actually one of our customers decided to stop building the connectors that we were making, called board mounted connectors. So we made a deal. We said, well, that's a lot of our business. So we kind of made them a deal that we would license technology for them and build them ourselves. So we got that deal going. However, they wouldn't allow us to use their part numbers, which really didn't work out because we'd have to be redesigned and we'd have to get requalified.
Oh.
So it didn't really work out. Unfortunately, because we were marketing ourselves to be able to make these connectors, is when we were at a show in Philadelphia, a microwave show, and we ran into Rosenberger at that show. Started doing work for them, and they became our customer and then bought us. So
got it. Okay. Wow.
And then, so that microwave was one business. The other part of the business was recorders, tactical recorders that we did a lot of parts for. Again, they went up a little higher quantity, but usually no more than like 10 or 15. So that was high quantity.
Still pretty low, yeah. That's still pretty low.
But in 2009, when one of our customers decided to drop the product line, we bought a couple of Swiss machines from them to continue the work on them. So that was our first, introduced the Swiss. Although before that, we actually subcontract most of the Swiss work out.
Got it.
So that kind of got us into Swiss. We still have those machines, but they're used for prototyping.
Right. So when we were prepping for this, you sent me, or just after the NTMA conference, you sent me a document that you had created called Defining Your Niche and a whole worksheet around it. And I was blown away that you'd put this level of detail and thought into it. And I'd love if you'd sort of explain why you created it in the first place, what you do with it. It sounds like you provide it and give it to other shops to help them. Talk about that.
Where it started was in 2007. There was a American Machinist magazine, basically had a top 10 shops, and we actually filled out the survey. It was a benchmark survey. Now it's done by Modern Machine Shop, but we filled out the survey and we actually won a top shop in 2007. So when the editor came in and interviewed us, took some pictures, photographs, and then made a little article. Then the next year, it was 2008 in IMTS, he says, hey, could you put a presentation on about your niche shop? Could you put a presentation on how you developed it into a niche shop, which we didn't, we did it over time. It wasn't like overnight. And how you could help other companies define their niche. So that's how the whole process started. So it was in front of the theater in IMTS, it was my first real standing up in front of 100 people, it's like a couple hundred people. But it was, and it just grew from there. I created a couple different worksheets to help define the process and all. So, But
Wow, that's super interesting. I mean, I've certainly heard the advice, and we we subscribe to it to some degree at our shop, but niche down until it hurts, right?
yeah,
That term, and you know, while and actually we were talking about this at a conference last week. That seems like on one hand it could be dangerous, but on the other hand, there's a lot of riches in the niches, as also people say. Can you maybe elaborate on your thinking of on becoming really excellent at a particular niche type of product type of company versus pigeonholing yourself and not having a great big enough market or something like
it
that?
always starts out when I talk to a company at a conference or whatever, and I asked them, what do you guys do? And they said, oh, we're just a general machine shop. And I said, no, you're not. I said, you can drill down and find exactly what you're good at. And then, once you do it, they need to market it. So that's kind of how it starts.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has it's an 80-20 rule. Everybody,
Mm-hmm.
20% of your product is your most profitable, or 80, 20% of your products are a pain in the neck.
Right. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it could be both sides of the 80-20 rule. So that's what you have to start learning how to weed out. And then once you find out what you're good at, once you find out what industries that your customers work in, then you go after your customers' competitors. You find out what trade shows they go to. You're going to work it. So that's the other thing about becoming a niche. It's got its pros and cons. I mean, the con is you have less competition, or the pros rather. You have less competition, but it's going to require usually a higher skill level and a little bit more direct marketing. And
Mm-hmm.
or the con is the reverse of that. Is the
Right.
you don't have a lot of marketing,
Right.
but because you're more direct, but it's going to require to possibly little by little retool the shop into the specific targeted area.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't really happen overnight type of thing. And
Sure.
I think that most of the large shops have already found their niche. So I would say that, but the smaller shops are the ones that really need the help to really drill down and find what they're good at, and then
Right.
and market that. And then you just don't want to go out and say I want to buy 5 axes just to buy 5 axes. You got to have a need for it, but you don't know until you have it,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's usable. And you got to stick your neck out sometimes for that kind of stuff. But
Right.
working in different niches, like if you're in aerospace and you want to do medical, well, they require two different sets of quality standards. You can do it. Some shops are doing it pretty good, but the smaller shops are not going to be able to go in those areas or go to automotive. You got to kind of pick your niche,
Yeah.
your industry, and work at that, working in your industry, because overlap's okay. Overlap's okay for shops that are more like service oriented, for EDM shops, grinding shops. They can do that. They can go across different niches, different industry niches.
Yeah.
But manufacturers like machining, milling, turning, it's pretty much got to stay within your niche because of quality system industry niche rather.
Mm-hmm. So when you are, I'm looking at your sheet here, right here. You have sort of basic industry and customer, and then profit factor, high, medium, low. So do you advise people to kind of analyze the work that they've done over the last year or so?
At a
And
larger foot level of it, not
mm-hmm.
down in every part,
Yep.
but in certain types of parts. You make certain flanges for this type of product line. Are you doing well on that one? Or okay, you might do it at an Inconel. You're doing really well at Inconel. You're not doing well at Inconel. Depends on the equipment you have.
Sure.
So that's what, yeah. You look at profitability as which customers are the most profitable.
Mm-hmm.
Which industries are the most profitable, and that's where you got to find your soft spot, your sweet spot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Do
it's
you?
common sense. I mean, you just
Oh,
got to
it
take
totally
time
is.
to
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And we at our shop, we definitely niched down reasonably well. I mean, I'd say we had a couple of different niches,
Mhm.
and I think in your sheet here, you definitely can identify maybe your top 10 or your main ones. But yeah, and then you already kind of alluded to this a little bit, but figuring out who your best customer is in that niche, and then who their competitors are, and then how you're going to reach out directly targeted to those companies. How do you mentioned trade shows? Do you have other strategies that you have used to find?
Yeah, you don't go to the job shop shows. You want to go to the shows like we go to a microwave show because it's a lot of our customers are all doing microwaves. I mean, if you're doing automotive, you go to an automotive show. So you need again that's a niche. You got to go to the niche shop, the shows that you can highlight your product. You might be the only machine shop there in certain shows.
Mm-hmm. That's a
But
great idea. Yeah. And do you also do the same thing on your website and such?
the websites we don't have as much control over now as we used to. It's
Sure.
now let's say the next 6 months we're working on because they just hired a marketing manager
Mm-hmm.
or director.
Yeah.
So now they're going to start. We're a German-based company. We have I didn't mention that, but we're a German-based company, a global company. So we have like 27 sites throughout the world.
Oh,
So we're
wow.
one of the smaller ones. So I think they have almost 20,000 employees. Rosenberger has like 20,000 employees globally. I mean, they have plants in China, plants in India. Not a whole lot of plants that actually manufacture stuff. Most of them are assembly plants, and they're really big in automotive. They build the big cables for the automotive batteries and even the sensors and stuff like that. So we don't get involved with that. We're
Sure.
basically defense industry in the U.S. to support. So
Okay. And do you have any, I mean, how do you, would you, if there's any rules of thumb of sort of the profitability of shops that really have defined and really executed on their niche versus more general? Any rules of thumb there?
EBITDA is a big number, especially if you look at the benchmarking from the modern machine shop.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the top shops are 15% or higher.
Okay.
Where most of the machine shop that I know around here are usually around 5%. You know,
And is that because they're more general and they haven't found their niche?
more in general, and they smaller machine shops I think are a little bit they invest a little bit more as far as their own money into
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really know the reason why. It's more like they're out to make a living, not a killing. I mean, you can't make a killing as a large company. Like you said, you usually bring your prices up until it hurts, then you got to
Right.
back off. Um, but there's a lot of stuff like just knowing your the customer's product. So in the microwave industry, we learned the terminology. You talk about the ohms resistance and the different terminology that we use when we're talking to the customer. So the engineers love that. They understand you can interact with them a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
So that you become an asset to the company when you can start being part of their engineering department. And
Yeah.
that's how we always went through. But we've never really had salespeople in our business in 75 years.
Right.
We always had engineering or model shop contracts with some of our customers. We did a lot of the model work, and then that's when we were able to get into doing higher production. Or if the engineer left, he would say, "Hey, I work with these guys; they're pretty good."
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we got in the door through engineering.
Mm-hmm.
And a
Yeah.
lot of shops do that, but we were pretty successful over the years, and we still are for today.
How did you first get good at that? Were you offering quick lead times and you just happened to get into these customers that were in this kind of niche, and then you just really provided those engineers with great service, quick lead times, or
it really started back in the 90s when we hired, again, one of the RCA divisions shut down their machine shop and we hired 9 of their guys. So and then we became their job shop, their prototype shop. But even before then, it was another facility up in Princeton that we did a lot of engineering work for. And they would have drivers drop the drawings off every day, and they want the parts as fast as they can get it because it was to support their manufacturing. So
right.
it just was, we were set to do small quantity, and we had good turnaround. When we had the top groups, the top employees that were able to turn that stuff around. And way back, I remember it was kind of interesting. We had like 6 or 7 employees. They had their own mill and lathe, and they had like a little shop inside of a shop. They did the job from start to finish.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So they had their own, they were assigned they had their own little area, little box area. They had their own mill, own lathe in their workbench.
Right.
So
yeah,
for years we had them, and we don't do that anymore. But we do have some key employees that we use. We used to have the 18 years ago that we would throw on a hot job. The customers, and a lot of those guys retired. So they haven't really backfilled. I mean, found the newer guys to do that, and that is a problem. We do a lot of mentoring with new employees.
yeah.
You can't find them in our area. They're stealing from each other, and we don't do that. So
Right. Yeah, I think that's pretty universal, at least in North America today. not being able to find enough skilled machinists. You
But
mentioned this A team. So was that sort of like a group of journeyman level machinists, that programmers that were just super excellent?
yeah, and even in our case, a lot of our machinists actually program their own jobs still today.
Right.
I would say 80% of the machinists do their own programming. So
Okay.
yeah, so they were more rounded, and they were called them model makers at the time.
Mm-hmm.
They were the top of the top,
Yeah.
and we had quite a few. I mean, some of our model makers worked for us for 50 years. So
Wow.
we
That's a long time.
had one model maker that we had his son, grandson, his son, grandson, and great grandson worked for us. So
Holy smokes. Wow. So let's pivot a little bit and talk about culture and talk about building a company that four generations want to work for.
mm-hmm.
How did you do that? What was the company like?
Well, it was more employee oriented. I mean, it was like a family, like most small shops are.
Mhm.
And still today, we have a lot of that aspects of it. But we always had flexible work schedules. I mean, yeah, we opened up at 5 o'clock or 6:30 in the morning. I'm not even sure when they opened this now, but and we have flex hours. So it's a little bit easier for a lot of the employees to do it. And even back when I was younger, at 12 o'clock, because we used to work 12-hour days, 14-hour days sometimes.
Mhm.
At noon, they would shut the lights out. The guys would pull out cots and sleep for half an hour.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so it's like the siesta time. So I never got into that, but it was a lot of the old, and I think we still have one employee that does that, still pulls out the cots. So, but
so
it's
so flexible work hours. So does that also mean like your kid has a soccer game and it's okay if you take the afternoon off and just go do that?
yep, yep. As long as you put your hours in for the week. So, and
Right.
we have a second shift, so they can a little skeleton second shift. So if they got to work longer, they can. So
Sure. Sure.
a little tougher on some of the production machines to keep them running, but
Yeah. So
they
when you had that A team and each person had their own area and they were, programming and machining everything themselves, I would imagine sometimes their need to take some flexible family time conflicted with the deadlines of the product. How did you balance those things?
well, it's always a tough balance on there.
Yeah.
And a lot of you had to give in because you just can, especially if they're working on a job, hot job or a really tense job, and then they just leave. You don't ask questions, just let them go.
Right.
And that's the same when if they have a family issue. We're understanding. As long as hey, what do we got to do to get the job out?
Mm-hmm.
So can you work later tomorrow, the next
Right.
day?
Right.
It'd be pretty good. I mean, if you give a little bit, they'll give a little bit. So
Right.
if you're too rigid, they're going to say, oh, I can't work over,
Sure.
so again, it depends on how you treat them. Treat them like you want to be treated in a lot of cases, and we have an open door policy even till today. Our general managers has an open door policy. Anybody come in and talk to him about whatever, and he also has with the key employees, he has weekly, monthly exchanges where he sits down. It's a two-way conversation, and they're only for 15, 20 minutes. What do you feel about the company? How do direction of the company? Do you like that, or does he have any suggestions? Or so it's pretty. It's nice to be able to have that open communication.
Is that a one-on-one meeting with each employee, or is that a group
One for
group?
the key employees, and then a lot of the key employees have one-on-one with their leads.
Okay.
So
Okay. Yep. So you do one-on-ones. Wonderful. Yeah. We've always thought that's a really important thing to do. So you do those monthly, sounds like.
I think the key employees are done monthly, but the other, where you have a manager of it, like the milling
Mm-hmm.
department, he doesn't have enough. He can't do them monthly, so
Right.
usually quarterly.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
too many people to do. He wouldn't have time to do anything else. So.
So flexible work, staying connected in communication with one-on-ones. Those are some good ones that can't explain entirely why you have three or four generations working for
Well,
you.
a clean work environment with modern equipment. I mean, that's like I said, you had to get the employees to stay, like
Yep.
employee retention. That's one of the big things we do. They have Rosenberger likes technology. They like to work with the latest technology that's out there. It's a nice clean shop. That's part of the Success and TMA Success program that we run in here. I mean, I can walk around in the summertime without shoes on in the shop and not get chips on my feet. So that's how clean it is. And the guys take pride from that. And we weren't always like that. It was only like 2007 when we moved into a new facility. I visited a few other shops through NTMA tours, and I said I want to be like that. I want to be, I want to be able to have, the place not smell or look like a machine shop. And we have drop ceilings and tiled floors, so it's a very clean environment. The guys keep it clean because they respect it. If you give them a clean environment, they'll keep it clean. And it's nice to come to work every day with it in a clean environment. So.
Yeah, for sure. And you sent me some pictures of the facility, and yeah, exceptionally gorgeous facility. Um,
I
I'm
mean, we're never done the 6S or 5S. It's
Yeah,
all
let's talk about 6S. And this and I didn't even know NTMA ran a 6S thing. Can you elaborate on what that program
yeah.
is?
And that started in 2007. I was the chairman or the team leader of the technology team, and we were asked by Harry Moser. We worked at where did he work at GF at the time, or was it? What's the name of the company?
Mm-hmm.
It's M House in Switzerland.
Yep.
So he brought a bunch of apprentices over to Switzerland, took them through some shops over there, and he came back and said, "Oh, we got to do something to bring our shops up to the level like the Swiss shops are."
Mm-hmm.
So as the team leader, we developed a team to put together to say, we were doing the 5S, and then we put safety in there because NT made a safety program. So
Right.
we called it 6S. So we basically developed an audit, and then some other. If you go on the NT website, it's free for anybody. You can do the audit. There's examples of the what a 6X shop is, and they were from 2007, and so they're our shop in 2007. So because I used ours as the basis for it.
Right.
So and there's a whole process on how to develop into a 6S shop. On each
Mm-hmm.
one of the it's been a while, so which all the 6S's are. And now
Yes.
we actually preach a 7th S now because of ITAR. So now we say
Security.
security is a 7th S.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Very
But
good.
yeah, I think that's one of the things we need to do in order to bring our all our shops up a level, and to get employees. If you're like if we brought employees through our old shop that we had back in 2005, it was a garage shop. It was a
Mm-hmm.
5,000 square foot garage, and it looked like it was 40 years old, so it kind of looked like it.
Right.
And it wasn't very impressive. And,
Right.
and it wasn't even to bring engineers through and all. It wasn't very impressive. So
Okay.
now we don't have to clean the place, and we have visitors come. It's always clean. So a lot of times you got your own shop. Oh, we got a customer coming. Stop, clean everything up.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have to do that. So it's
Yeah.
always.
How I think this is a topic near and dear to many people's hearts, and is an aspirational thing that they actually have a hard time getting to the level that they want. How did you make that transition from the garage shop to a super clean 6S facility?
Well, like I mentioned that a little earlier, but we actually moved to 97. We grew out of we needed two more CNC machines. We didn't have room for them, so we broke off our production and moved it to another building.
Okay.
And then that moved to another building, and so we moved up. And then again, the shop was too small, so we decided to move that to another building. So now we're working at two sides of a new building, and it still was very cumbersome.
Mm-hmm.
So it was in the end of 2006. We said we got to do something. So the building, the landlord became a slumlord in a sense. The roof was leaking. We actually had a machine inside the electrical department filled it with water because over the weekend the roof leaked and there was nobody there. So we blew boards out on the machine. So it's getting to the point we had to do something. So around the corner from the building we were leasing, building became available, and we purchased it in the end of 2006.
Okay.
And then again, from going to all these shops, some of them were medical shops. So I said, well, what do we want the place to look like? And so we wanted it to be nice and clean, open, clean. And that was our inspiration. And it's actually, it gets better every year.
Mm-hmm. So I understand the facility move as kind of a tipping point, if you will. But you had team members that were accustomed to, sweeping up most of the chips, but not all the chips. And when you had a coolant spill, you get most of it, but it's okay if there's some left under the machine or whatever. How did you go from that being the norm to, all right, that is no longer how we're going to have the shop? Was there a lot of buy-in? Did you have pushback? Did you
No,
have to?
I think once they moved in and saw how clean it was, and
Okay.
plus at the same time we were about, I guess, a little over 35 employees, and we hired a part-time maintenance person, which made a big difference. So you didn't have
Okay.
to worry about, they just swept them up into a pile and somebody else would pick them up.
Got it.
So, so that helped a little. But I think that we gave them a clean space and we told them we needed kept clean. And we did. We
Okay.
also at that point we were doing 6S 2007. So we had a couple classes on what 6S is about.
Hmm.
And if you can't find it in 30 seconds, it's not designed right. Not just a clean thing; it's a lean
Yeah.
process. And if you
Yeah.
go through our plant, we have also just about every machine has a toolbox or a tool area that it has the foam boards.
Right.
We used to use whiteboards, but now we're switching to foam boards.
Yep. Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's also like I mentioned, we bring customers through. We bring engineers come in. It's a selling feature. It's a
Hmm.
part of sales.
Oh
When
yeah.
you bring something through, it's, wow, I'm doing satellite components. So this is a perfect facility to do satellite components.
Hmm.
It's nice, clean, organized, and especially like quality control. I mean, we've always been, I would say 45208 was the old spec. It's AS 9100 now.
Yep.
We've always kept up with the specs because we had to. We were doing defense work in aerospace more space in aerospace. We don't really do any part of aerospace.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
We do make
Yeah.
connectors that go on the radar systems for the jet fighters and stuff like that. That's about all we do.
Okay.
But
So you mentioned some of those sort of older journeyman level that worked for you for decades. How are you dealing with community engagement and recruiting today, and training and trying to upskill people?
it's tough. I mean, we're competing against. We bring people in we have a big assembly department, and we bring people in at $16 an hour that don't have any skills. But we can. Home Depot is $16 an hour. We had this fast food or Wawa's at us, but like Circle K's or whatever, they're $16 an hour.
Right.
So we're competing with all these retail stores for the entry level person.
Right.
Difficult to do it, and so you got to
Yeah.
get them hooked. You got to find somebody who wants to work with their hands. We usually ask what hobbies they have. You get a kid that works on his car. You can probably get them hooked.
Right.
But it's tough these days. We go through the schools. We work with the community colleges. They have a couple programs that are underemployed or unemployed.
Hmm.
But most of those people don't want to work anyhow. So we've tried a couple of them who we haven't been very successful.
Okay.
But we do work with the community colleges. So we have a lot of online courses that we use. We basically do on the job training, and through
Hmm.
either NTMA or our community college has one through. Well, the other one is Towing U. They use a
Okay.
part of Towing U. I'm trying to get them to switch over to NTMAU.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I helped develop that program in 2010. So I'm actually I love working with the schools, going in there and talking to them. But now I feel like I shouldn't be doing that. I need to get younger guys to do that.
Oh,
Have
sure.
an old guy come in and talk
Past.
about the trades. Yeah, I need to get some 20-year-olds to come in there and talk. It was just kind of funny because back in 2000, we had a 20-year-old that we had a meeting, and the president of the NTMA was meeting at a local trade show. And
Hmm.
so he called Jason up in front of the whole group and talking to him, how are you doing? What are you doing? And he says, what truck do you drive? And he had like a brand new truck, whatever. And he was like 20 years old. So we sent him to school to learn integrated manufacturing, and they also learned some PLCs and stuff like that. So in like 2 years, he left us and went to a couple of different companies. Now he's my boss. So
Oh, really?
we hired him back 3 years ago, and now he's the general manager and the
Okay.
operations manager. So it's kind of fun. He was my apprentice back in 2000, and
Oh,
now
I
he's
love that.
my boss. And it's good for him. I mean, he's did a good job. I keep him on his toes now.
That's
So.
fantastic. Awesome. What um, if you could describe some of the most memorable experiences from owning your shop, whether there was the highest highs or some of the lowest lows, just most memorable.
Well, the highest highs are anytime you bring some kids through and you tell them what you do,
Mm.
or I have a nephew or niece that comes in and say, hey, I got to do a school project, and I give them some parts, here's the housing, this is the backpack radio for the astronauts on the shuttle, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Here's an antenna shaft. Its sister shaft is sitting on Mars. You
That's
know,
so cool.
here's some I guess resistor housings we had. These are out of the solar system. They're on the Voyager. You know, so so
Wow.
it's kind of interesting. You know, it's neat to see that that when you bring to for the kids' eyes when they say, "Wow," you know, they don't know where this stuff is actually being made,
Hmm.
and to see that we have a list of different stuff in our trophy case that we give to when the kids come and see, yeah, this part like this is sitting on Mars. We have a picture of Mars, and you can see the antenna shaft sitting right in the front of the middle of the picture, which is kind of cool.
So when you have kids come on tours, you send them with a sheet showing the parts and
No,
where.
no, they're in our trophy case basically. So,
Okay. Okay.
I mean, I wish we had more kids. We haven't done it the last couple of years
Sure.
because
It was COVID and all that.
stressed.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just stressed also right now with that. Not enough people to do it. So this year
Yeah.
we didn't do the manufacturing day, which is, and then the last 2 years we didn't because of COVID. So we got to
Sure.
get back onto it again.
Right.
But you know, the other wins is, you know, anytime we bring a customer through, and you're proud of when you bring people through the shop is what you actually manufacture. You know, everybody's
Hmm.
proud, and we like to ask the employee, "What are you working on?" You know, and they pretty much know where it goes. Sometimes they know where it goes.
Right.
Sometimes we're not allowed to know where the part goes,
Yeah.
and we do that too. We come up with at least. I think it was last year or 2 years ago, we developed a power presentation of where our parts that we manufacture and where they actually go.
Mm.
So a lot of our employees don't know where our parts go. So
So that was an internal presentation mostly.
internal presentation, yeah.
Right.
Uh, and that's I guess we can incorporate that into. It's a long presentation. It was like 20 minutes, but we can incorporate some of that into the manufacturing days in the future. So
Yeah.
it is kind of neat. I mean, to see where our parts go.
Hmm.
And some of I mean, the highlight also was selling the business and seeing Rosenberger take it to the next level, because I
Yeah.
never would have been able to even come close to what they were would have what they did actually and where they're going. You know, the next 5 years of what they're looking for.
Sure.
Uh, and and I think some of the bad things or the worst things that actually happened is if I didn't sell it in 2012 during the 2015 and 16 the defense sequestrations, we lost half of our business. I
Did you
don't know if it
really?
would have. I don't know if I would have been able to carry through it
Wow.
because they had deeper pockets, and
Sure.
defense market wasn't a big part of theirs. We were able to, we had to make cuts and all, cut the hours back and stuff like that. But we were able to slide through it without the worry of having to go out of business.
Hmm.
You know, and we pulled through and we just got stronger. I mean, anytime you get the lows, you always wind up being stronger. It always takes it off even higher.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been through slows in the 90, 91, 80, 81. It seems like 2001 with the 9/11.
Hmm.
These were all real slow periods that happen.
Yeah.
And you always come back stronger. And it weeds out a lot of the companies too. So if you can hang in there through a low,
Yeah.
you're gonna be a little stronger when you come out of it.
So before they bought you and you guys were on your own, how did you handle going through those lows?
Uh, I went months without pay.
Yeah.
Like me and my two brothers. I mean, we would take loans out to be able to carry the payroll sometimes, knowing things were going to pick up.
Right.
And so, I mean, that's what people don't understand. A lot of the employees don't understand about small businesses, the risks that they have to take, keep it going. And in years that weren't great, we would still take a small loan out at the end of the year to give bonuses
Really?
because all the employees look forward to the bonus at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So, and they would work it off the rest of the year. But it's
Wow. You
well,
take out a loan to give bonuses. That is that's yeah.
I mean, they don't do it. I don't know what they do nowadays because I'm not
Sure.
involved. But this is when I ran the company back in.
Yeah. No, that speaks. I mean, I was asking what you do to have three or four generations work for you, and the fact that you're taking out loans to give bonuses, that says a lot. So, wow,
A
that's
lot of employees ended, and I mean, we're always open with the employees. That things aren't doing, and they knew because the hours are cut back and stuff like that. But a
mm-hmm.
lot of them relied on that year end, but it wasn't much.
Sure.
It was a week's pay or something like that. But it was
Yeah.
but still, we take out small loans in order to be able to carry it because we didn't have the money in the bank to pay it.
Right.
But in 2 or 3 months, we'd pay that off. So it wasn't like it was a high risk, but
Just more of a cash flow thing, being able to afford to
yeah.
have it to give it. Yeah.
It's always that way. The cash flow always drops off the end of the year.
Sure. Yeah. Wow. That's some good stuff right there. Um, so as we kind of start to look at wrapping up, I'd love to hear about just your outlook on the machining sector in North America right now, and what shops should be doing to make sure they're leveraging that and succeeding.
Automation, that's the big thing. Even when at the IMTS this year, everybody's doing automation. I mean, we're having trouble doing it here because our parts are so small. But our secondary operations or our value added operations that we do are not machine related. We do a lot of fixturing, a lot of palletizing
Mm-hmm.
from one operation to another. So less handling. We put load 100, 200 parts on a pallet. Go from one, pallets are 6 inches square, so you can see how small our parts are in some of these,
Yeah,
or microwave connectors.
uh-huh.
But that's you have to start drawing some of the labor out of it as far as and you can do that through automation very easily, but if you have the right product,
Mm-hmm.
and you also got to look at the right machines. We weren't looking too far. We actually bought a 5-axis machine because we're doing a lot of we did 5 or 6 or 8 operations on these complex brackets to hold the thrusters on satellites.
Okay.
And you do them on a lot of 2-axis machines or 2.5-axis. You have a lot of little operations on there. So we bought a
Sure.
5-axis to do that. But we didn't realize that in the future we would need to have air through the spindle to open and close a column. So just that in itself to upgrade that is like 30 grand.
Mm,
So we will eventually do it on our machine because we're starting to see more production on that.
right.
So that we can add a pallet changer to it. But you need every piece of equipment you buy today, and we make sure everything has 4 or 5-axis capabilities.
Sure.
You need to look to make sure that you can have automation in it. I think every piece of equipment you buy.
Right.
Uh, and automation can be many different ways. I mean, we took a simple thing of we actually take microwave connectors and they're gold plated, and we dip them in solder and snap off the solder to get the solder off. It's called the pre-tinning. So it takes the gold off of it. So when it adheres to the solder to the circuit board, the joint doesn't have gold embrittlement in it.
Mm.
So it's okay when you're doing 50, 100 pieces, but we get order for 50,000 pieces.
Oh, wow. So you do some really high volumes now. Yeah.
Yeah. So it took me about a year and a half to develop we found a machine that we could use, and we modified it. And now we can do, I guess it's almost 10, 15 seconds apart. And it's fully automatic. We palletize 200 parts on there and just walk away. And 20 minutes or 40 minutes later, the machine's done. And it's
Impressive.
and we just next month we should get our 3rd machine in. So and that's what we took it from especially when you have a $5 or $6 part and you're taking $1.50 off of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not so much that we're selling it to the customer cheaper. Well, we are. We're not making as much money on it, but the thing is, it's more of a value added thing. So if we can compete with somebody, if somebody's adding $1.50 to it, we're only adding 25 cents to it.
Right.
We were guaranteed the contract.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's more of a value added. And then even packaging, we do the same thing with packaging, that it's put on the vibe table. It vibrates into a pallet. We put them on a machine that actually loads it into a tape and reel that are used for place and pick machines.
Mm-hmm.
And it does about 2,000 parts an hour. Again, without anybody standing there putting them in a hole.
Right.
So again, these are small automations on our value added services that we've done.
Right.
And we're always looking to do more, and that's my job.
Right.
A roundabout way is I come up with all these ideas and just to speed things up, to automate things. And
yeah, go ahead.
One last thing I wanted to say. One of my dad's favorite sayings. He said, "We never lost money on a job we didn't take." So that's it. Sometimes you got to be a risk, to take a job, but if you know it's going to be a loser job, you shouldn't be taking. There's so many companies that do that. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we had a company just recently that we do a specialized paint, a primer. So they sent us the part for the primer, and we said, realize that this is going to be $30 to paint this part, because the primer is it's like $4,500 a gallon. It's an ESD paint, which is we have to adjust this resistivity on it too.
Wow.
So he said, he goes, well, I'm only getting $30 for this part. I said, that's why you got the part. You got to research it. So.
Wow. Yeah.
Luckily they were able to go back to the customer and got more money for it. But.
Sure. Yeah.
And then the other thing is the same with Lynch. You can't be everything to everyone.
Yep.
Yeah. And be as proud as you do of what you don't do is what you do. That's Steve Jobs. He said,
Right.
yeah. So
Yeah. Be as proud of what you don't do as what you do.
yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, that's good advice. Absolutely. Fantastic. Well, Ted, thank you for sharing just incredible story. What I mean, from the 40s all the way up till today. It's amazing. So yeah, congratulations to you, your family, and everyone that's been involved in your success over the years. That's
It's
truly
been real
remarkable.
fun, and it's still fun. That's why I enjoy coming to work every day. So
Yeah. I guess one last thing before we say goodbye. As you said, you're looking to, start cutting back your days. How are you making sure that next technical advisor is trained up enough to step into your shoes as best they can?
they just hired in January. She's been here almost a year. An engineer right out of college, a mechanical engineer,
Mhm.
Leia. And then we have another fellow. His mom works here, and he's been working here off and on for a couple of years. He's going to Villanova. He's in his last year of engineering. So now we have two. They're not even engineers. They're full time engineers that we're training.
Mhm.
So I have another engineer, hermetics engineer that I work with, Mike. He's 62, I think, 60, somewhere around there. So he's going
Yeah.
to be looking to retire in the next couple of years. So now we have, which is Rosenberg is good on. Like they hired Jason to eventually Joel's going to retire. Joel's our general manager.
Mhm.
Eventually he's going to retire. So Jason eventually will have a couple of years to get the knowledge under his belt. And the same now, they hired these two young engineers that we're working with, and we're training them every day. We do a lot of training PowerPoints, and then they update. I do a lot of PowerPoints, and then they take the PowerPoints and add embed videos to them. So
Oh,
they
nice.
make them even better. So anything, they're just sponges. It's great working with. It makes me feel younger too. It's great working with young kids,
Yeah.
but they're really good. They're really sponges, and they're really enthused. I mean, sometimes we got to hold them back too much because they get so much energy. They
Mhm.
want to do this, they want to do that, they want to learn. They eventually they're going to learn machining too, but because it's a shame a lot of these colleges, universities actually, they
Right.
don't teach machining. I mean, how can a manufacturing engineer or mechanical engineer design parts when they don't know how they're being made?
Sure.
so, so that's going
Yeah.
to make these guys a lot better, and that's different from myself. I started as a machinist, moved up to a pseudo engineer.
Mm.
Uh, but that's where we're going to try to make sure that these two have the knowledge of machining too. Besides the knowledge of, they're doing most of the stuff they're doing now is the assembly, designing
Okay.
fixtures, designing pallets that we use through the oven,
Right.
designing molds. We do some silicone molding so we can hold parts through different processes, pick parts up and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
So they're designing a lot of those things. So and we have a 3D printer now that they're using a lot, and an SLA. So
Right.
they're doing a lot of small. We do a lot of small 3D printing. So they're really enthused on that. Now that
Yeah.
she's Lay wants to get you. I want a robot. I want a robot. So we're gonna get one eventually. But I said when they have one, they can pick up a 9,000th pin. We'll get one. So
Wow. Well, sounds like a winning strategy. So that's
yeah,
great. I'm sure
Rosenberg
that's
is good at is cross training and looking down the road and say, we get. I guess they call it exit strategy in a sense, but
sure.
it's who we're gonna get. I could get hit by a bus tomorrow.
Of
So I got to
course.
take all my knowledge out of my head and put it down. It's fun doing that.
Yeah.
How do you teach somebody that what I did 5 or 6 years ago? How I came up with this concept to tin these parts.
Right.
Where and then basically it was just seeing a video online of something similar. And I said,
Mm.
this is great, but we need to improve, even get it faster than that.
Right.
So so I have to teach these guys how to do that, how to look on the internet. I'm always on the internet. Look on the
Mm-hmm.
internet, look at the YouTube videos of different subjects. We're looking at a lot of laser right now because parts are getting smaller.
Yep.
If you obliterate the material instead of wasting a 5,000 diameter end mill. So so these are
Amazing.
different things we're looking at down the road. Is in some of our business, everything's getting smaller.
Yeah.
Said make using 5,000 pins, and
Sure.
where's it going to
Of
go from
course.
there?
Yeah. Smaller and lighter. And
Yeah,
yeah. Awesome. Well, Ted, thank you again so much. This has been
sure.
super fun. I appreciate you
Yeah,
sharing all your wisdom. I will definitely make sure there are links to the NTMA 6S link. Make sure that people can access that if they want to. And
and the,
yeah,
the niche, but they can just send me an email. if they
Or
want.
do you mind if we just post it on our site, or do you want to share it out?
It's fine. I got approval from Rosenberger's good on helping other shops out and also.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, we'll make sure there's links on our website to those PDFs and such.
Yeah,
All
and
right,
they have
Ted.
the industry. That's so we all, and that's what's good about the NTMA. We don't hide
Yeah.
anything. We are always talking. We're always mentoring each other. So
Yes.
I love giving back. I love helping small shops.
Yeah, me too. We have that in common. Yeah, and I agree. The NTMA is just, yeah, plug for the NTMA. It's just such a great organization. So, all right, Ted. Well, thank you again, sir. Really appreciate your time today. And we'll talk to you again probably at the next NTMA meeting.
Yeah, sure.
Perfect.
Arizona.
Yep.
Great.
Bye bye.